I recently ranked all 34 of the Suikoden minigames from worst to best, and there were certainly some controversial picks in there. This time, it's time for Eiyuden Chronicles minigames. Just like Suikoden, one thing that Eiyuden done really well was its minigames. Yeah, there's some stinkers in there, and some of them do need some work, but there are also some amazing ones mixed in. The only thing I'll be taking into consideration with my ranking of the minigames is how much fun I had playing them. Also, I won't be including things like hero mode, trading, guild missions, or hot springs in my rankings. I know some people consider them to be minigames, but they're not really. I have over 350 hours in Eiyuden Chronicle 100 Heroes spread across 3 different playthroughs, and while it's not a perfect game by any means, overall I love the game and I hope the series continues with many more games and even more spin-offs like Rising. With that said, let's not waste any more time and rank the Eiyuden Chronicle minigames from worst to best. Number 7. Fishing. In last place, and in a very negative tone, we have fishing. Anyone who watched my Suikoden minigame ranking video knows how I feel about fishing minigames and knew that this would be ranked poorly. I'll put it as bluntly as possible. This minigame sucks, and I mean it's straight up garbage. There isn't a single positive thing that I can think of to say about Eiyuden Chronicles fishing, and I have absolutely no idea how anybody could enjoy this. I have never been more bored in my life while playing a minigame than when I was fishing in this game. There is nothing to do here. You press X to cast your line, then you sit around waiting until a fish bites, and when a fish bites, you press X again and you're done. There's no reeling mechanics, it's just press X, wait, press X. The worst part about this minigame is that it's mandatory to recruit a character, and you have to catch a specific fish to recruit him. But the fish is only in one of the 21 fishing locations, and the game doesn't tell you which location. Even when I found the right fishing location, and by found I mean I googled it, I had such bad luck catching it that it took me over an hour to catch the necessary fish. No minigame has ever made me groan as much as this one did. There's 52 fish to catch, and there's no point doing it unless you want the achievement or the trophy. Seriously, fishing minigames suck and they always have me sighing and groaning in annoyance, but this was next level. If I never see another fishing minigame again for the rest of my life, I'll be happy. Number 6. Eggfoot Racing. I like the concept of Eggfoot Racing, but I hate its implementation. There is way too much going on surrounding the Eggfoot races for my liking, and it's far too grindy. To compete in the Eggfoot races, you first need to either purchase an egg or get one as a loot drop from a monster after battle. It then takes 15 minutes to hatch the egg. Once an Eggfoot hatches, you can enter it into the races to compete against other Eggfoots, where you can win prizes to help improve your Eggfoot's stats or change its appearance. There are around 40 races to compete in, each one with varying obstacles and terrains such as grass, sand, swamp, magma terrains, with mazes, ramps, hot coal, and tunnel obstacles. The races themselves are done automatically, and you watch your Eggfoot race against up to 5 others to reach the finishing line first. At first, the races are quite fun to watch as the courses are small and the races are close, but this gets tiresome very quickly as you need to do so many of them to actually make any progress with your Eggfoots to stand a chance at competing on the more difficult courses. The grind involved in this minigame is outrageous. First you have to find or buy an egg, then you have to wait either 15 minutes for it to hatch or watch a race. Then you have to race it and feed it after every race, but each Eggfoot can only race a maximum of 9 times and only be fed 6 times. After that, if it's not living up to expectations stat-wise, you either let it go or you hang on to it for breeding purposes later. Now you have to do the exact same thing with another Eggfoot. You have to get an egg, hatch it, go through all the races and feeding, then when both Eggfoots are all fed and raced out, you breed them to get an egg to be 1 rank higher, with hopefully slightly better stats than its parents. Now you have to do all of that all over again so you can get another Eggfoot to breed with your slightly higher rank Eggfoot to get a slightly higher rank Eggfoot than them. Eggfoots can start at ranks E, F and G and go all the way up to S rank, so you can imagine the sheer amount of time involved in raising an Eggfoot from those ranks up to an S. Now luckily in the very late game and on New Game Plus, you can get the Champions Eggs for 1200 gold each, which will almost always hatch at a B tier, so that does save some time, but you still then have to hatch and raise multiple Eggfoots from B to S, hopefully with the right stats and abilities. This game has absolutely no respect for the player's time and it's a disgusting time sink. I love the concept of the Eggfoot racing, but I absolutely hate its implementation. Number 5. Shiarcraft Racing. This is probably the most hated minigame in Eiyuden alongside Big Oma. It's also the only minigame that you can't play from your headquarters. In Shiarcraft Racing, you race through the desert trying to reach the finish line to beat the fastest time. But unlike most people who hated the Shiarcraft races, I actually had a lot of fun with it. Most people hate this minigame because they struggle to steer the craft and they have great difficulty controlling it. They say the fault lies with controllers, particularly with the analog stick, and they insist that you must play it with a D-pad or a keyboard. Well, I had absolutely no issues playing this with a controller or using the analog stick, and I even beat the hardest course on my third attempt during my first playthrough of the game. This minigame is not and never was as difficult as most people make it out to be. It's actually quite simple if you slow down and brake when turning corners. You all just suck at it. There's 2 story-based courses that you need to complete to recruit Scarlet, and then there are 4 optional courses that you can choose to race on, each one with increasing difficulty. You can win some armors for finishing first on beginner, intermediate and advanced, but the real prize here is the model Shiarcraft item for the hot springs that you get for beating the fastest time on the expert track. But as much fun as I had with the Shiarcraft racing, this is definitely the minigame that you'll be playing the least, as it's quite limited with only 4 different tracks, and that's really my only complaint. I wish they expanded on the Shiarcraft racing a lot more than they did. Had they made actual courses where you had to do laps while racing against other opponents, this would have been awesome. Unfortunately, all we got were a few time trials where you race by yourself to beat the other characters' preset times, which really limits its replayability and makes it get quite boring after a while. Number 4. Big Oma. This may just be the most hated minigame in Eiyuden, and I'm not entirely sure if I love it or hate it. You start each game by selecting which 3 Big Oma you want to battle with. Games are best 2 out of 3. You aim your Big Oma, time your spin, and let it rip Beyblade style. Once you spin your Big Oma into the ring, you have very little control over the battle. The only control you have during the battle is when you use your boost. When the boost gauge fills up, you can press X to boost, and if you time your boost correctly, you can trigger clashes where you have to button mash to gain the advantage. Whichever player wins the clash can do a sizable chunk of damage to their opponent's Big Oma, or even blast their opponent's Big Oma out of the ring. There's nothing more satisfying than having some little punk kid with an ego challenge you, and then you humble him by smashing his Big Oma to pieces and watching him cry. Big Oma also has a very lengthy storyline which has recruitable characters locked behind it. Some people loved it, most people hated it. I thought the story was goofy and silly. It's filled with over-the-top wacky dialogue and characters, and for me, it was all the right kinds of stupid. I really enjoyed the storyline. Dr. Cork is an absolute blast, and I thought Big Oma was a fun breakaway from the main game. But what about the negatives? And oh boy, there are a lot of negatives. When you start the questline, after your initiation duel, which you'll win fairly easily, you're then thrown into the world of Big Oma with 3 of the worst and most useless Big Oma in the game. Your elemental piece and 2 practice pieces. You can't beat any opponent with them, and even little kids will humble you. So how do you get more? You have to travel the world, and by pure luck, at some point you'll get a Big Oma drop after battle from fighting random monsters, and now you'll have an idea of how to get more. But good luck with that, because monsters only have an 8% drop chance, and you don't know which monster even has a Big Oma. A frustrating part about battles is that your opponent can use the same Big Oma 3 times, but you have to use 3 different Big Oma. If a round is a draw and you both lose all of your health, well tough, it's not actually a draw because it's considered a loss for you and a win for your opponent. And even though it's a best 2 out of 3, you're forced to pointlessly play the 3rd round even if you win the first 2 rounds. It also often feels like a complete slog to get through. The Begoma questline opponents have requirements to be able to face off against them, requirements like beating a certain number of opponents to be able to challenge them. So you have to travel the world talking to random NPCs in every town, every village, every forest, every mountain, and hoping that they play Begoma. And when you get into battles themselves, you'll have to go through some serious trial and error with every single battle as you try to figure out what all the stats do and what their strengths and weaknesses are. Because as with every part of this game, the help menu offers absolutely no help whatsoever. If you're on your first playthrough, I'd strongly recommend waiting until much later in the game when you gain access to stronger monsters in higher level areas before you start the Begoma questline, as then you'll have access to much better tiered Begoma drops and you'll save yourself hours of headaches. This minigame could have been so much better than it was. Travelling around the world, collecting Begoma, battling opponents, it's such a fun idea, but just like with the Eggfoot racing and the Shiarcraft racing, it was a great concept, but it feels half-baked. In truth, I think I love the storyline more than I love playing the minigame itself. It was so stupid and over the top, and Noah took it way too seriously, and that kept me amused. Number 3. Cook-Offs. This was the minigame that I was most excited for in the lead up to the game's release. I think it might even be safe to say that this was the minigame that most people were excited for because of our love of the Suikoden 2 cook-offs. Just like in Suikoden 2, you battle against rival chefs in a cooking contest where you prepare an appetizer, main course, and a dessert. Each one will then be scored on a scale of 1 to 5 by a panel of 4 judges who will be chosen at random from among the characters that you've recruited. Each character has their own likes and dislikes, and there are over 90 recipes to find within the game. Finding a balance between what your judges do and don't like ensures that there's near endless replayability with the cook-offs. It's almost identical to Suikoden 2's cook-offs, and it even has an equally goofy storyline attached. And once you complete the storyline attached to the cook-offs, you can freely battle against the final chef as often as you want, which is something that we all wish we could do in Suikoden 2. But how do Eiyuden's cook-offs compare to Suikoden 2's cook-offs? Eiyuden has a lot less recipes to choose from than Suikoden 2. While Suikoden 2 only had 40 recipes to collect, it actually had over 240 recipes, as depending on the seasoning you used while cooking, it completely changed the recipe and turned it into a different dish. Eiyuden Chronicle, on the other hand, only has 93 recipes, and no seasoning to alter them. That's quite the difference. The cook-offs were also bugged at launch, where the judges rated every course as an appetizer. So everyone who played Eiyuden at launch cheesed their way through the entire minigame with fried eggs and coconut water for every course. I think this definitely hurt a lot of people's enjoyment of the minigame, as every contest was incredibly low scoring. When the cook-offs were fixed in a patch about a month after release, most people who played the game at launch had already moved on to their next game, so they were left with a sour taste from a broken minigame. But me, I've done 3 playthroughs of 100 Heroes. I played it at launch and experienced the buggy, unfun version of the cook-offs, and I've experienced it fixed and at its best. And does it live up to Suikoden 2's cook-offs? Almost, but not quite. It feels like there's something lacking, there's something missing. I don't know if it's the lack of recipes, I don't know if it's that the music isn't as good as Suikoden 2's cooking music, or maybe it's just nostalgia. Even still, while it may not be as good as Suikoden 2's cooking minigame, it's still great fun. Number 2. Card Battles. The card battle minigame becomes available once you recruit Glenn. When you speak to him at your headquarters, you'll be able to challenge any character that you've recruited to a card game, with each of the characters having their own rank ranging from C tier to S tier. There's 120 opponents to play against, and this minigame will easily take you around 8 to 10 hours to complete. But before you play, you'll want to purchase card packs from Glenn and collect new cards to build up your deck. Once you've built up a good deck, it's time to jump in and play. The mechanics for this card game are great, and the game is very easy to learn. There's a nice mix between look of the draw and strategy to build up big scoring combos. The only complaint I have about the card battles is that there is absolutely no challenge provided by any of the opponents. Even the S tier opponents offer such little challenge that you'll be winning by 20 or 30 points to nothing. The game offers so little challenge that you have to intentionally gimp yourself by creating a bad deck if you want a competitive match. I sunk around 30 hours into the card game across my 3 playthroughs. I love this card game so much that if it had actually been challenging and competitive, this would have been the type of minigame that I would have sunk countless hours into. It's the type of minigame that I would have regularly booted up Eiyuden just to play. They've got a great foundation for a card game, and when the inevitable Eiyuden Chronicle 2 comes out, I hope they build on the card battles and bring it back with difficulty options. I would love to play this on hard difficulty, and this is the type of minigame I could easily see myself sinking 100 hours into. And finally, number 1, the Theatre. This is by far the best minigame in Eiyuden Chronicle 100 Heroes. I have over 350 hours in Eiyuden Chronicle 100 Heroes, and I've spent around 50 hours of that in the Theatre alone. The Theatre in Eiyuden absolutely blows Suikoden 3's Theatre out of the water. There are 5 scripts to collect that allow you to perform plays such as Red Riding Hood, Cinderella, Romeo and Juliet, Town Musicians of Bremen, or even a retelling of Eiyuden Chronicle Rising. Just like with Suikoden 3's Theatre, you cast characters you've recruited into roles for the play and watch the play unfold. With so many characters to choose from, the possibilities for the casting in these plays is nearly endless. Every character's personality has a chance to shine in the plays, with some characters being natural-born actors and excelling in any role you put them in. Some characters are so full of themselves and love to improv, going completely off script and doing their own thing. Some have absolutely no interest in being on stage and begrudgingly and annoyingly say their lines. And of course there are some who are natural comedians. Sure, you can cast the perfect characters for the perfect roles and put on a masterpiece, leaving the crowd in awe and giving you a standing ovation. But once you've gotten the prize for S-ranking each play for the first time, where's the fun in S-ranking it again? The real purpose here is to ruin the play with the worst casting imaginable, causing such a train wreck of a performance, sometimes even so much so that it bears little resemblance to the actual script, and leaving the crowd so annoyed by the garbage you made them watch that they boo you off the stage. It will never not be funny. What makes this so much better than Suikoden 3's Theatre is that there are no limitations for roles. You can cast any character in any role, and every single character has full voice acting for every role in every play. It's insane. But not all is great. Many people have a lot of difficulty actually getting the scripts for the plays, as 4 of the 5 scripts are rare finds in stores, and they only have a 10 to 30% chance of appearing every 30 minutes. And then some of the plays can't even be used until you've gotten the final theatre upgrades in your headquarters, which means that quite a lot of people won't get to experience them, which is a real shame as there's great fun to be had with the theatre. The Theatre is incredible and it's easily the best minigame in Eiyuden. And there you have it, that's my Eiyuden Chronicle 100 Heroes minigame ranking from worst to best. Do you agree or disagree with my list? What do you think about the minigames? How would you rank them? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks for watching guys, and I'll catch you on the next one.